Hello guys, and welcome to our first episode of Creating Magic. In this episode, we're going to be talking with Jack Tighe, professional magician and sleight of hand artist. Jack's going to be telling us a little bit about himself, about creating magic and his experience in the magic world, as well as give tips on how to create magic yourself. So make sure you stick up until the end and discover all the secrets that Jack has to offer. I would like to start a series, and you're like the first person from the series, where we talk about creating and about creating magic and performing our own creations, basically. So I think you're perfect for that because you've recently had a new release, right? With five of your things.
It's something like 5 things. It's actually, we've been releasing these downloads since, well, definitely the better part of a year now. So it's all a load of stuff that we filmed in the autumn of 2019. And then I think the plan originally was it was going to be kind of a big 2-disc download or a 2-disc DVD set. But then COVID happened, and then, you know, the way that the marketplace is now, you know, downloads are a lot more popular than DVDs. So myself and Owen, we discussed it, and then we decided to split the project up from being one big huge project into lots of small mini bundles.
You've been collaborating with BigBlindMedia for how many years now?
Oh man, it's over 10.
Over 10.
So the
situation with that, how did that happen?
So the guy who I was always described as raising me like a single parent in magic was Liam Montier. I've been friends with him since I was a kid. He kind of brought me up in magic and taught me the fundamentals, taught me everything really.
Oh, wow.
When he started working with BigBlindMedia, it wasn't too long until I was tagging along, and you know how Owen is. You know, everyone loves Owen. Everyone gets on with Owen. Him and Rachel are two of the nicest people you could meet. So just from the first time I met him at Blackpool, we hit it off, and I've been, you know, tagging along with BigBlindMedia ever since.
That's quite a romantic, magical story. I like that.
We have had many romantic moments over the years, particularly at Blackpool.
Particularly at Blackpool, I can imagine.
Yeah.
What's the first release that you've had?
The first release, well, it started out, I wasn't on camera on projects for a few times. I've been behind the camera a few times, just with Owen messing around, and a few things that I'd come up with ended up on the Forces project and one of the John Carey projects, and I think one of the Ultimate Self-Workers. A few ideas I'd had, and then eventually we just, you know, I can't even remember what the first project was, but eventually I was on there myself as well, and we've done that a few times since. I've been on the Cameron Francis ones, some of the Bannon ones, Ultimate Self-Workers, Carey, my own. It's a fun thing. It's a good day out. If you ever go to Owen's and film, you are treated like visiting royalty. It's great.
Tell me, I'm very curious, because you started off, as most people do, as a hobbyist, and you start playing around with ideas. Mm-hmm. When was the point where you realized that, hey, I think I can actually create this stuff. I think I can make tricks and sleights and routines.
Well, yeah, this is another situation where it's been slightly different for me, because the way I put it a minute ago was that Liam Montier was like a single parent. That actually makes it more gentle than it was. He's like an angry magic Yoda with more swearing. So essentially, when I was a kid, I say a kid, you know, you're talking 15, maybe 16 or whatever. We would used to meet up for regular sessions kind of once a week, and he would just insist, he was like, you better have something new to show me. And you know, for the first 5-6 years you do that, everything you're showing is terrible. There's no good material when you're that age and you've not been putting stuff together for that long. But the whole point of it was I had to have new stuff to show him. And you know how creative Liam is, so it's kind of, you know, it's hard to keep up, but he forced me to always have new things to show him. And believe me, I'm glad there's no permanent record of some of the things that I was coming up with in those years, because some of it is absolutely terrible. But yeah, it's entirely that. It was just practice, like anything else in magic. Coming up with material was just trying until it started to get better.
Has there been any ideas that you have developed in that period and you've remembered and were like, I think I can make that work now.
Yeah, there's one thing from that time and place that I still maintain is really, really tightly constructed. I can actually show that to you if you want to see it.
Yeah, go for it.
Let's take a look at this. So this is how old this thing was, man. This is from back in the day when I still used to think it was good to have really elaborate storylines for tricks. So the idea would be that someone would go through and they would touch a card. We'll just do this myself and we'll just go there, say, okay,
there
5 of hearts. And the idea was that we'd use, I don't know, some kind of, science process to try and break this card down, because this is just like anything else. It's made up of, carbon basically at the base level. It's just atoms and molecules. So we can try and break these down a little bit. So if we just apply a little bit of heat and pressure, maybe there's some dust on the mat or something, I'm not quite sure. But if we just apply some heat and pressure, see, there it goes. So now you would assume that I'd somehow snuck it to the top of the deck, but it's not there. And it's not on the bottom of the deck either, which means it's actually down here in small tiny little particles, and you can gather these up and sprinkle them back on the deck. And again, with a little bit of heat and pressure, it comes, oh, no, I missed one. Biz, take that. Take that last particle, Biz. You grab that off me. Take that. You hold on to that.
Got it.
And now all I want you to do is throw it back at the center of the card.
There we go. Through it. Boom.
And it
There
comes
we
back.
go.
So that was one of my earliest things. And even though it's silly, you can't take a move out of that. It's pretty tightly constructed.
Yeah, you're right. I like it.
So that's from when I was about 15 or 16 maybe.
I'm very happy that you said one thing that we actually talked about the last time we met at Carl Fong. So you said right now that this was back in the time when you would make elaborate stories. And when we met up and you told me that, you showed me a move and you said this was back in the time when I was more focused on visual stuff. So I would like you to talk a little bit about how your style changed over the years of creating.
So yeah, I don't have a particularly clever answer to that. The the long and short of it is it's when Ben Earl came onto the scene, basically. And not when he came on the scene the first time for Past Midnight. That was around about 2007, I think. It's when in 2010 he went on to Penn and Teller Fall Us. And he did the ace cut and the thing he calls Dead Flow. And just overnight I went from wanting to be a buck twin to wanting to do what Ben Earl was doing. So that's when I started getting into table work. And then around about the same time is when I started really looking into the work of Dave Williamson, Chris Power, Steve Forty, those kind of guys, those four.
No.
Ben Earl, Steve Forty, Dave Williamson and Chris Power. They kind of became my kind of four magic card handling gods. And so I wanted to start doing everything a bit slower, more naturally, no flashy stuff. And yeah, I kind of stuck to that ever since.
You actually did work with, you ended up working with Ben Earl, right?
Yeah. So I got to know Ben in around about 2016. And we got to talking, hung out a bit. I took lessons with him for a couple of, maybe about a year and a half, once every 3 months or so, maybe 5 or 6 lessons overall. But when you do a lesson with Ben, it's it's a full-on thing. You get there in the morning and you leave late at night, and he just blasts you with information. And then we kind of lost touch for a couple of years. Got back in touch recently, and he asked me to do the lecture day in February, which I did for Studio 52. That was a lot of fun. That was me and another couple of friends. Christian Grace was there, Stephen Bridges, Lucosi. That was a good day, fun day. Sarah Stott was there creating mischief behind the camera, as she does. It was a good day. Mars Nikuzi filming the whole thing is another good guy. That was just one of the most fun lecture days I've ever done.
What would you consider to be the real work of card magic or card stuff?
The real work, man. Do you know what?
The real work.
Even know anymore. I mean, in terms of card magic.
In terms of anything that's card related.
I mean, for me, the work I focus on, and this probably comes from, as I say, being pretty heavily influenced as a card handler, not as a performer, because Williamson is a whole league of his own. But as a card handler, Dave Williamson and Chris Power for Magic were the two guys I, kind of strived to emulate a lot. And, they're very classical. It's peak, pass, palm, top change. Those classic kind of, pre-Marlowe almost categories of sleights.
Yeah.
The big fundamentals, the big basics. And, Ben is the same. He preaches, respect the basics, focus on the fundamentals. So I think for me, that's for card magic. For myself personally, that's the real work. There's a lot of really interesting, fun moves you can do. That, sometimes myself as well, I like to bring those out at a convention or a jam late at night. But for the stuff I really like to focus on, it's the big core fundamentals. It's peak, pass, palm, top change, double lift, like the real basics. I've got a million key card placements. I've got a load of glimpses. That's the stuff I really like to focus on.
Do you have a go-to routine that incorporates the things that you said? Like, for example, do you perform casually for people?
I try not to.
Try not to.
I try not to. So I do formal shows with Chris Wood, the company that he runs. I do formal shows. So people buy tickets, they go to a theatre, they see 3 magicians in the course of an evening. We each do 25 minutes. And the format is myself with a card table and people sitting around the card table in a horseshoe formation. It's normally about 50 or 60 people. And over the last 5 years or so, I've got really comfortable in that environment. That's where I feel like I'm at my best. What I struggle with socially or casually is going from talking the way we are now to being on performing. So I've got a little bit better at it. I think the answer for myself personally is to just really tone down the presentation, and take all of the patter out of it. Obviously, when I work properly for laymen in a paid show, I've got scripts that I've been working on for several years. Everything's polished, but close up socially, I don't like to feel like Mr. Entertainment. So most of the time I try not to do social magic, but if I'm asked, I will do it. And my go-tos there are very, very simple. I will do something very similar to Chris Power's sandwich routine, which it's nothing like a standard sandwich routine. The card is peaked at, it's lost in a deck, they shuffle, they put 2 jacks in, you spread through the deck to show there's nothing between the jacks, and then you hand the entire spread to them. They can still see there's nothing in there. They square up and then their card appears in between. I'll do that. Nice. I'll do a couple of my own things as well, but it's not stuff that I've ever published really, because the stuff that I come up with to use for laymen is, it's a peak and then the deck goes down and then there's some kind of premise or talking. It's not interesting a lot of times for magicians to publish it. So yeah, it's all very chapter 1 card college. It's lie detector, it's pseudo memory, it's
I know what you're saying.
All of those kind of plots really appeal to me. Sort of, psychological card magic, as Eugene Berger would have put it.
But laymen love that. They really love that.
Yeah. There's a thing I do for laymen all the time, which is basically it's almost straight out of close-up card magic. So I will write down a prediction on a piece of paper, screw it up into a ball and hand it to them, shuffle a deck, spread it on the table, and then the ball moves back and forward across the spread until they say stop. The ball goes down on the spread, and then the card that the ball is touching. You might have to eliminate a couple of cards if it's touching a few, but they make the decisions. And then the card that they place the prediction on is the predicted card. And that's killer for laymen.
I like that. I've never heard about that. I like that.
Did you ever see that video of Jared Koff doing just a card trick by a fireplace?
No.
That's like the perfect casual way to do a card trick. That looks great. I think that's exactly how Magic should be casually.
If you would be, I'm very curious. This is more of a funny question. Okay, so take it like that. If you would be challenged and you would accept it, so right, we're in this universe where you accept this challenge. If you would be challenged to perform a Halloween show dressed up as something, what would you dress up as? Like, what would your character be?
For me, it's gonna be something from Star Wars. It's just deciding which one it is.
Hey, not bad.
Doing a magic show in like a full-sized studio broadcast quality Chewbacca costume would be pretty cool. I would like to do that. And then you don't even have to have any interesting scripts. You can just have a card picked and then sit there just going.
You're right. I wanted to talk a little bit about the bundle itself. You got there the table de Paul. You got the table Charlier, the Charlier shuffle. You got one thing over here that it's called the pickup mix, which I really liked, and the shuffle call. I actually could not find the shuffle call, so it's probably hidden somewhere in
it's probably
in a bigger release.
It's probably good that it's hidden. I don't. Do you know what? The routine I'm really happy with. It's quite well constructed. It's well put together. But at the time that we filmed it, I hadn't done a Zarro shuffle for about 3 years, and that routine needs you to do 3 consecutive Zarro shuffles. So the Zarro that I did on there, it's terrible. It's ropey as hell. So I'm glad there's not a trailer of that, because I don't want, the routine is good. If people learn the routine and they do a good Zarro, it's well put together, but my Zarro is shocking on that filming.
I like that. Okay, so there's a reason why it's hidden.
I used to do... Yeah. At the time, I used to do the Gary Plants handling, and that's only really any good if you're reaching down to the deck from like a standing position. And I just didn't stand up. I stayed sitting, and my wrists are cramped, and it's not good.
What about the impossible stock control? I love this. This is mind blowing. I've seen it do you live.
So I can show you this now.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it, please.
Okay, because if you watch the top stock of the deck, make sure that gets buried. You see that get buried down?
Yep. Yep.
Yep. Just in case, make sure that top stock gets buried. That gets buried down. It's good.
Completely buried.
Yeah. And make sure this is a real strip, not a base strip or an optical strip or something like that. Make sure this is a real strip, that you can actually see the cards change in position, right?
I can. That's true.
Okay. And we'll do the same thing with the bottom stock. You see the bottom stock buried?
Yep. I can.
That's good. And again.
Yep. Yep. It's going in. This is so confusing.
To be extra fair, we can even burn cards, right? We can burn a card from the top and bottom, which is what they do in games. Right? But
yeah.
Still have.
So good, man. So good. It's like I saw it live and my brain went, I know how that is done. And then my brain went, you don't know how that is done, man. And I could watch it, right? Because I have access to the download. But like, why? Because I've watched it many times and I think this is so beautiful. So for me, I don't really want to know how it's done, because I'll probably see it many times done, and every time it'll fool me so good, because I have no clue.
It's just funny the way it came about, because I had nothing to base that sequence on. So what happened is my friend Brad went out before me or him had ever met Ben. He went to see Ben do a show for the public, and he came back. I said, what did he do? Was there anything really, really cool? and he said to me, he's got this stock control where you watch the top stock being buried down into the deck in a riffle shuffle. You see it riffle down, and then the top stock is still on top, and he had no idea how it worked. And I've asked Ben about it since, and what he was doing was something different. But that just got me thinking along the lines of, I come up with a bunch of things. I was like, how can I really, really sell the top stock being buried down into the deck and make it impossible for magicians, like almost like a magic trick? And that was one of the best sequences I came up with. Now, since 2020, the Steve 40 books came out, and there's a couple of things in there that are similar, but this is still a little different.
Nice.
Obviously, I didn't know that, until we got the 40 books. None of us knew what we didn't know, right? We were all just in the dark until the 40 books came out. So,
you basically answered the question that I wanted to ask you, like, how did you end up coming with this beautiful effect? And the thing that I wanted to lead to, and why I left this at the end, what's your creating process?
So I don't have one, and also I don't like to talk about creativity. I just watched at the weekend at Carla Fong, I watched Alan Rorinson do his lecture. Now that guy is creative.
Yeah.
That guy's insanely creative. For me, the way I look at it, what I do with cards, it's just problem solving. There's nothing really creative about it. I'm not, inventing new things out of thin air. I'm looking at problems in existing things, moves that I don't do. So I'll think, why don't I do that move? And I try and isolate what it is I don't like about it, and then fix it for myself.
Okay.
And then hopefully, my goal is I make a bunch of choices along the way for moves and routines. There's choices and trade-offs. I make those choices and trade-offs to make myself happy. And, luckily I've had a few years now where the choices I've made have been interesting for other people, and they want to also see it. But yeah, creativity, I don't see it as being creative with card tricks. It's just problem solving and fixing things. But either way, the process, I've got a couple of different ways I go about it. One is to, as I said, I'll sit there and I'll look at a move and I'll think, why don't I like that move? Why don't I use it? And I'll try to solve it to the point where I can fix it. Sometimes, Liam Montier or John Bannon or someone will suggest a challenge, and the goal is to come up with a way of handling the plot. Sometimes I come up, you're just playing around with cards and you think of you find an interesting sequence and you find an effect to fit it. And sometimes it's just a premise, sometimes it's like a hook line or a presentational angle that I want to explore, and then it's about, putting something together to fit it. So there's a whole bunch of ways that I go about it.
Do you have a zone in which you enter when you start creating? Like you sit down somewhere or you do something? What's your problem-solving zone? Atmosphere.
Most of my best stuff happens first thing in the morning when I've woken up, my wife has gone to work on a day off, and I sit there and I have coffee and I try not to spill it on the sheets, otherwise she wants to murder me. And then I sit there and play with cards, and something about that first, a couple of hours in the morning, a lot of the ideas that I like the most have happened just from sitting there in bed with coffee and playing with cards. Trains as well. Trains is another one. If I'm on a long train journey.
If you would go on a 17-hour train journey and you would put a book out with everything that you come up with, like that would be, you could definitely do that.
Probably, and the journey from mine to Liam's is about 4 hours, so I normally end up with something from the train journey as well.
If you, let's say for example, there's somebody sponsors a book, but everybody that participates in it has to create it only on a train ride, and you go on a 7-hour train ride with, let's say, 4 other magicians. What are the 4 magicians you'd like to be there and create with? And you can choose dead or alive, for sure.
Oh, okay. Wow. So just for just for fun card tricks, like, you know, the kind of card tricks I call Sunday tricks. You know, where it's a Sunday afternoon, you sit down with a book, and it's not necessarily stuff you're ever going to do in a show or for laymen, but you go through like the Elmsley books or something. It's just really clever, well-constructed card magic that you just do for yourself. So I will say that would be my ideal train journey, and the other four people don't even have to think about it. Liam Montier, John Bannon, Alex Elmsley, Roy Walton.
Hey, beautiful, beautiful. That would be something. Maybe in the future when we get holograms, that can
exactly
happen.
Right.
So one last question. Let's say somebody's watching this interview. They're 12, they're 14, they're 18. It doesn't matter the age, but they're at a point in their passion about magic, let's say, where they feel like they could be creative. They could be creating. They feel like they're good at problem solving, but they don't really know how to go about it. So what would be your advice for somebody that just starts out creating stuff, discovering stuff?
Practice. It's exactly the same as sleight of hand or anything else in magic. You have to do it a lot. And like I said at the beginning, I'm glad that no one has got any permanent record of some of the things I came up with when I was 15, because it was all terrible. You know, even things that I come up with 4 or 5 years ago, I look at now and there's things I don't like about them. I'm always trying to get a little bit better at doing it, but it's just practice. You know, I've had a lot of people come up to me and say that I can't come up with material, etc., etc. And I'm sure there are people that just sit there and ideas fall out of the sky. I'm not one of them. It doesn't come to me naturally. I had to work at it. But Liam made sure that I worked at it. Like I said, I had to have new stuff to show them every time. So I'd say that the best thing they could do is force themselves to come up with stuff. And for a long time, it's not going to be any good. I mean, if you listen to any songwriter, you know, talk about their first songwriting attempts, they say it's all trash. No one starts out being able to write a song. But they did it a lot, and eventually they got better at doing it. So yeah, just practice and work at it, and eventually it will come.
If I would take something from what you said, would be from your experience with Liam, people that want to start out creating, they should challenge themselves. Propose challenges, plots to solve, try and search, like for example, there are Hofzinser's 10 card problems, I think it's, right? Mm-hmm. They can try and work those out. If not, I've heard that somebody was challenging Liam to create a card trick using tap water. So he'd have to turn the tap on and create a trick involving that. So in a sense, people could challenge themselves like this, try and get as much out of their comfort zone.
And the other thing as well, I would say, is, you know, it's not as common these days, because a lot of people, you know, a lot of the younger kids are learning magic, you know, from YouTube or wherever they learn it. I don't know, but, you know, certainly online. And you lose out on the aspect of having someone older that's more knowledgeable, that can look at the stuff you're doing and say, oh, what if we tried this? What if we did this? What if we tried to make it better? That's what Liam did for me for years and years and years and years. You know, so I think if you can reach out to someone older, or not necessarily older, but definitely that's been in magic for longer and knows more than you, to bounce ideas off of, I think that's a valuable thing as well.
Beautifully put. I have noticed that there's been more of a separation between the younger generation and the older generation since the digital age came about, and that's perfect advice, man.
I got lucky. Liam worked at a magic shop 15 minutes from where I used to live, so I strolled in there on the first day, and as luck would have it, you know, he was 6 years older than me. He had his own collection of books. I couldn't afford books at the time. He'd read Marlowe, he'd read Elmsley and Walton. He knew everything, it seemed to me, at the time. He still does know everything, actually, to be fair. He knows more about magic than anyone I've met ever. But yeah, so I got lucky, but I think people should try and find their version of that.
We're nearing the end, and would you like to say anything in the end? You know, people have the last words you say before death, like what would be your catchphrase, you know? This is like that, the last words before the interview ends.
I would say, in the words of the late, great Colonel Sanders, I'm too drunk to taste this chicken.
That's such a good metaphor. You could literally think about that regarding to magic. I'm too drunk to appreciate this trick.
That was just a reference to Talladega Nights, but it makes me laugh, so I'm going to end with that.
And that was it, guys, for this episode of Creating Magic. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell button in order to be notified for future interviews that we're going to be doing. There's a whole new series ahead of us, and we're going to be bringing people like David Solomon, Cameron Francis, Liam Montier, and many more. And before you go, let us know in the comment section below what you consider to be the real work of card magic. My name is Biz, and I hope you guys have an amazing day. Abracadabra!